Welcome to a Milk Market Tidbit for the September 2023 Federal Milk Marketing Order information that I've just downloaded from USDA. This is Dr. Lawrence Jones, and I'm recording this a day or two late because I was involved with some family events, but I wanted to have time to kind of sort through this. So, as usual, we're going to start with the statistical uniform prices, which are the highest in the southeast at 23.59. Again, they add $5 and change to their class one, so that's always why that's the highest. And then they're going to range in that 19 number, like in California, Northwest. Sometimes it's going to be in the 20s, like the Northeast, and then sometimes in the 18s, like Minnesota, Wisconsin. But what's most important is how they change from one month to the next. That just kind of tells us what's going on. And across the nation, is about $1.20 increase in milk prices, according to the statistical uniform prices. So there are two things that impact this change. One is, what is your distribution of the different classes? Because we can see that class one increased $2.28, whereas class four increased only 18 cents. So if you got higher class one, you're going to have higher prices. And the other is whether you've been depooling or not and whether you've changed on that. So let's remind ourselves who has a lot of class one. And overall, class one was up about 2%. It represents about 26% of the milk in the pool. And it's usually down here in the southeast, with Florida being the highest, about 82%. Now, areas that are very high cheese production, like the Minnesota, Wisconsin, are only going to be about 6%. But a lot of them are going to run 30%, like the Northeast and the Midwest here. So if we look at this change in uniform price, we can see that the highest is going to be down here in the Southeast. The lowest was actually in Federal Order 1 for Northeast. The other one we need to look at is the Class 3 utilization, because that's almost the inverse of Class 1. Again, Florida is going to be only about 2% Class 3, which is basically cheese, whereas Minnesota, Wisconsin is going to be pushing 92, 93%. So when we look at the change in uniform prices, I really want to focus on three major areas. And actually, I would include Order 33 in this also, but they have very unique things going on. So one of the things that we talk about is the change in class utilization. And normally from month to month, it's not a huge deal, but look at this 10% here. Look at this 4% here, this 4% up here, 4% up here, 12% up here in the Northwest. And so all of these change their class 4 utilization. And this is going to change our interpretation of the daily milk production. So here is our daily milk production, and across the nation we're up 5%. And so right away I know that that's not right. There's no way that we're up 5%. And again, I've got these three areas highlighted, and I want to also include Michigan Order 33, because these are up fairly significantly. Take Minnesota, Wisconsin, it was flat. The Northeast was actually down, but that's because they're moving milk south. And I think the Northwest was also down because they were moving milk south. If you look at just class 1, 2, and 3 and ignore 4, across the nation, we were basically flat on milk production. So to understand this depooling issue, I put together a new graph that I used for Order 33. And what this is daily production of Class 3 and Class 4. So I'm forgetting about percentages at the moment. So if we look at Class 3 in blue, we've been kind of trucking along here. About 24 million pounds a day would be where we are if we're not depooling. If we look down here during the pandemic, there was significant depooling, and that dropped down to 5 million pounds a day. Now, one of the things I noticed when I built this graph, if you look pre-pandemic, we were right in here about 17 million. And so what happened that we went from 17 up to 25? Well, that's not depooling, that's called a new cheese plant. So that cheese plant was taking about 8 million pounds of milk a day. And so our new goal on Class 3 and Order 33 is more like 25 million as opposed to 17. Now let's look at Class 4. So we were not depooling during the pandemic. We all know that it was very low price compared to class 3. And so we can see we stopped depooling here, we stopped depooling here, but we have been, depooling significantly during 21, 22, time periods. And if we look at this particular month, we increased the class 4 utilization. And that's the reason that they were up 13%, not because they were making more milk per cow or anything else, but more milk went into the pool from class 4. As we looked at the fat percentages across these different orders, they were very strong at 4.04, and we'll actually get the fat for the country in the egg prices later in the month. But again, very strong numbers. Florida at 383, Northwest at 422, just very, very strong numbers. So again, fat tests were up, and the pounds of fat were up, but again, that's partly due to more class 4 into the pool. We don't get protein numbers from all of the different regions, but the ones that we did, they're about flat from last month. So here's my take of the data that we've just got. Milk prices are definitely up. There's less class 4 depooling, so it looks like the milk production is way up. But I'm saying that September milk will be about even with August on a month-over-month basis. And then definitely fat percentages are up. So I said I was a little bit slow on getting you this because they started coming out at the end of last week. So we did get a global dairy trade today that was up in skim milk powder and whole milk powder. Tomorrow we're going to get the national dairy sales reports along with the advanced prices, and then Thursday is the milk production report that will kind of really pull together, what's going on with cow numbers and other things.